and welcome to Steven University. This week we are, of course, still in hiatus mode, so we are doing recaps. Woo!
Way!
See, Chris, not bummed out about the fact that we're like 40 days into a hiatus or whatever.
I'm pretty bummed out. Well, I'm bummed out because in a way I was almost more bummed out by watching this because I enjoyed it a lot more than I did the first time. I mean, it was mainly anger I felt the first time when we watched this.
Yeah.
But it was kind of like, oh, this isn't new Steven Universe. This is old Steven Universe, and yeah, and it's such a different show now. Like, Steve, do I have to? I don't know. Should I recap the episode? Recap the episode?
Because we never did it originally.
Good point.
I just went back and looked at that, and listened to that podcast prior to this, and we don't bother.
I knew you'd do that. Well, I didn't have a name at this point either.
No, it didn't.
I knew you'd do that because you're going to be really annoying because you do that thing where I'll say something and I'll go, I don't remember feeling that the first time, and you'll go, well, actually, Chris, what you said the first time, and hit me with something I said years ago.
Not my intention, but I mean, I did the request of some of our listeners. I did write down some of the funny things.
Oh
you
yeah,
said.
that's fair.
So I my intention isn't to correct you, but I think there's some things I would like to ask you if you still feel that way about, for sure, because
cool.
there was some thoughts you had, and
well, that's a good idea.
And I had some I felt like I had a good defense, but the defense came with, I understand why you feel that way now. I'm hoping you'll feel this way once you've seen more about that element. So I re-listening to it was really good because now I get to say, now having seen the whole show, do you still feel that way? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I have got some quotes, but my intention is not to blindside you with, well, Chris, originally you felt like this. My intention is to point out, one of the quotes I've written down just because it was fucking hilarious. Which, by the way, Chris, I don't compliment you enough on this, but you are fucking on form in that first episode. It is so funny. It is so funny. So we'll get to it, but let's do what we didn't do the first time before the show had any sort of structure. Chris, what's it about?
So this episode begins with Steven upset because his favourite ice cream, Kitty Cats, is it? I can't remember.
Cookie Cat. You've just watched
Cookie Cats, that's it. I know. Wait, hold on. We had to re-watch this? Oh, shit. I thought we were going off memory. No. So Cookie Cats are gone. He gets home after leaving the Big Donut upset and with the fridge. And it turns out that the Gems purchased the cookies.
The remaining
so he starts
cookie
eating
cats.
one. He starts eating one. His gem starts to glow. He gets all pleased. Oh, when he gets home, they're fighting centipede monsters. He gets all excited. He tries to summon his weapon or make his gem glow again. He's not able to. Pearl tries to get him to do it with some sort of flowers and feng shui. Garnet tells him to connect to the universe. Amethyst is, very chill about the whole thing. And then he eats another cookie cat and the weapon appears again. They fight the centipede's mother. He takes the cookie cat, eats all the cookie cats in an attempt to summon the weapon. Does not manage to summon the weapon, but then defeats her anyway with the help of the fridge, which gets destroyed. There you go.
Yeah. I think first thing I want to ask you about, Chris, in terms of how you feel about this episode now, is the thing I found that you said in the original one that I was like,
is it worth me giving instant reactions first?
Yeah, okay, it's a good idea. Yeah, go on. That's a good idea.
Just because then I'm, that just gives an instant reaction, doesn't it? My instant reaction was kind of surprised. I was surprised at how much of the episode was taken up with the cookie cats, because my memory of these early episodes is very much there's a monster, they try and defeat it. But a lot of this was taken up with the cookie cats. There wasn't actually that much centipedal monster there. Centipedal there. I was surprised at that. I felt like we got a fairly good grasp of the characters. I was stunned, and I don't think it's just nature and natural thing. I think Zach Callison has genuinely made Steven more grown up with his voice, and the animators have made him more grown up in recent episodes.
Agreed.
I was impressed by how young he felt in this.
I 100% agree with that.
I loved the they're hinting at Garnet having future vision, even though they don't say that, because she's like, it was my idea to get the cookie cats. Because clearly she could see they were about to go out of business, which I thought was really cool and a nice hint at things. And yeah, it very much felt like the show. I think it kind of had a really good tone to it. I think it will be, we mentioned to each other before we started recording, we're going to do Laser Light Cannon next week.
Which we don't want to start a trend of doing every episode.
We're not doing every episode.
We will be picking, but I felt at least, I don't want to speak for Chris, but I felt strongly that these two are both discussion worthy on a rewatch, because there's often debate about which one is a better introduction to the show. And my opinion on it has changed since recording, over a year ago, those first two episodes. So I think it's going to be worth us looking at both of them and then skipping ahead to, the episode that shall not be named, or Freibo, or one, like some of those other weirder earlier episodes. So we'll definitely start skipping ahead now to certain ones. I'd still like to try and do them in rough chronological order, but we'll go through a lot of the key ones and sort of see how they're affected in new context, in the new light of this, especially knowing the truth about, like, God, how many episodes we're going to be able to go back and watch with, like, loads of, like, Rose foreshadowing and...
Yeah. We'll break it up as well with discussions if some news breaks, or if just a discussion comes to us. I know a lot of the comments and a lot of the Discord were like, nah, rank the gems, go on. So I might get my way on that, you never know.
I did not see a single comment like that, so you've either dreamed that or I've missed that. So
I'm sure someone said to rank the gems.
So it's got a lot of the comments were like, do that to... I'm sure someone said. Right, okay, that's quite different.
Well, sure,
I will say that on a previous episode you talked about Animorphs and was like, hopefully some people listen like Animorphs, although I was disappointed with the lack of response to Hanson. A couple of people put like, fuck yeah Animorphs, or I love Animorphs, so I definitely saw that, man. So you're not alone with your love of Animorphs.
Fuck yeah. I swear someone was like, rank the gems, Paradox blatantly number one, or something like that. Anyway, so I actually thought this was, it's really weird, because it's a really, I finished it and was like, oh, that actually is a really good introduction to the show. And then I was like, well, although that's because I know the show. So, but you shouldn't have to know the show to find it a good introduction. I completely missed the first time, I think. The way Lars is just like, your magical powers from your belly button, and then Steven like gets out his belly button, and it's this notion that kind of, in a way, is all you need to know at that point. Like, oh yeah, is that thing in his belly button? It's got magic powers. That probably frustrated me at the time. But looking back, I'm like, with context, I'm like, that's probably all you need to know. But should something be frustrating? But it probably wouldn't be frustrating for kids. I don't know. What were some of your questions based on what I did definitely say?
Well, there's a few different areas I want to talk about, because like there was some of your criticisms were completely valid, and some of them were valid. Well, a lot of them were valid in the context of watching it the first time, but become less valid in the light of the whole show. So I was just curious to see if you'd moved like on from the criticism or no longer felt that way about this particular episode with the context of the show.
We're still doing this shit, so I assume I've moved on from the criticism.
No, but you might still feel that applies to the episode, even with you might go, yeah, the show gets there, but it doesn't change how I feel about this. And I'll talk with the first example, and this is an exact quote from you, so I've written it down. So correct me or address this any way you feel appropriate. It wasn't, in this episode at least, overly funny. Rick and Morty grabs you from the off because it's really funny. BoJack Horseman grabs you with the characters right away. This doesn't do either. So
fucking hell. Harsh.
Oh, mate, you were so angry, and I think we're okay to talk about it now. But am I right in saying? So you say in that first episode, oh, there's that, there's a lot of personal stuff going on right now, so maybe I'm not in the right frame of mind to do this, or maybe it's perfect because I'm going to be extra honest. If memory serves, that was a bereavement, wasn't it, in the family? Timing wise,
yes, yeah, I believe it was, yeah.
And we obviously didn't want to talk about it at the time because it was like the first episode of a brand new podcast, and they're like, family member just died, yay! But like you had just had
was dying, yeah.
Yeah. So I totally get where you were coming from, but I do think in a weird way, like the universe handed us something beautiful because that first episode, your sheer lack of patience with it, and your sheer lack of interest, but at the same time you apply that same analytical mind you apply to the shows when we talk about them normally. It makes it really fierce, but quite biting and quite funny, and also like not completely inaccurate. Again, there's a couple I want to go through, so let's talk about that one specifically. How do you watching this particular episode again? Do you stand by that, or did you? Because my argument was back to you at the time was, this is a bit like hearing an album for the first time. You don't always understand, like, the tone of it and the you don't always write. You're not in sync with the album straight away, or like a show that uses a new style of comedy. It takes you a couple episodes to sort of get into it. We talked about Arrested Development, how that's got such a specific sense of humor. It takes a few episodes before you understand what it's trying to achieve, and then when you go back and watch the first few episodes, they are funny. You just didn't get it at the time. Does that make sense? So I
don't think they're hilarious. I'll stand by them not being hilarious. I laughed at Pearl's "What are in these?" I found that funny.
Yeah, it's a great one.
But I don't think it's as funny as the show gets. And the character thing is really hard because obviously now we know the characters. So I would say now the characters are there, but I don't know if that's because I know them. Because if you not... The gems don't get a lot of screen time, although arguably the 3 gems approaches to how he should deal with his summoning his shield are actually very in keeping with those gems.
Precisely. I talked about that with you at the time because another, go on, finish your point, and there's another element I want to bring up.
No, so I wouldn't be as harsh as that now, but I think there's some merit to what I'm saying, to be honest.
So you stand by that you don't think, even if that was harsher phrased than maybe you feel now, you still think it's not a particularly funny episode?
I don't think it's that funny, no, but if the more, I don't mean this in a derogatory way, if the more childish humour is what you come to this show for, then that's there. But the more childish, like a lot of the Cookie Cat stuff is quite, quite slapstick and quite, him throwing up him eating all the cookies and throwing up. It's quite slapstick. It's quite childish humour. Again, I don't mean that in a derogatory way. And so I think that style of humour on this show has never particularly been my jam. It's been more the New Girl-esque dialogue humour. But if you come to it for that kind of humour, then arguably that's present, I think.
No, I think that's fair. In terms of the characters, one of your criticisms was you talked. I referenced the moment when trying to describe the episode, and I say, "Oh, I really like, Amethyst's like, we stole you the Cookie Cats," and Pearl's like, "Oh, I went back and paid for them," and you're like, "Yeah, I didn't write your quote down for this one, but you said something along the lines of, yeah, that just screams Cartoon Network. Like they wanted the joke to be that she stole them, and Cartoon Network were like, you can't have them stealing them, so now put a line in that they went back and paid for them." And I said, actually,
no, that's not fair.
Because what I was going to say, because what I said to you at the time is, once you know the characters, you realise that it is absolutely in line with Amethyst for her to say, "I nicked him," and for Pearl to be like, "For fuck's sake, right, I've gone back and paid."
Yeah.
Because like she's an agent of chaos, where Pearl is like the responsible one, and in a weird way, it's setting up their characters super early with little moments like that. But like, it was hard for me to...
We're recapping episodes to prove that you were right. Yeah, yes, Dan. Yeah, no, it is. You were right.
But I was about to spin it into a wider point, Chris, if you'd let me, you dink. The wider point is, characters, I think this episode actually does, and it's the primary reason my opinion has changed as to which of these two episodes is a better introduction to the show, is that on this particular rewatch, I felt stronger that they were doing a lot more character work than I think I was aware of, even when we talked about it last time. Particularly in their different approaches to helping Steven summon his shield. And I think little moments like the Cookie Cat one we just talked about, and Pearl's very didactic, talking about like the physics and like how a leaf blows on the wind and how you must be one with the physics of the universe to do it. And then like he goes to Amethyst and she's like, "Did Pearl say the leaf thing again?" And it's like I don't know. It's really clever. It's a bit like, it's not as good as, but I've always complimented the opening episode of Friends because. Because within about 8 or 9 lines of dialogue, you're pretty clear on what everyone's character is. It's actually
don't get me on that, because I'll go on a massive rant, and I'm thinking of doing something which I don't want to say because you're going to make me do it, and I don't want to force myself to do it.
Right.
Well, I've got to say now, haven't I?
You have a little bit.
We went to Friends Fest at the weekend, and I've been meaning to ages buy the more recent DVD set. It's complicated. Not the Blu-ray set, not the first lot of DVDs, but the more recent than that. I think it was released in like 2000 I don't know. But basically they released a box set which contains the episodes in their complete form. So all the stuff that got deleted for the NBC airings, for some of the NBC airings, for some of the international airings, there's like 5 hours worth of deleted stuff put back in, lines here and there. And I've always wanted it, and going to Friends Fest was enough to make me go like, and Jess saying she's never watched it all the way through, or watched it in order at the very least, made me go, I'm going to get the Friends box set. So I got the Friends box set. And we start watching it, and I just, like you just said then, like, first of all, I was just amazed because it's like, it's such a joy to experience a show I've got so much nostalgia for and watch stuff I know I've never seen. So that's awesome and a lot of fun. But also, I was so blown away by how good the pilot was. But obviously, like, what was really weird about it is I watched Friends aired between 94 and 2004, and I started watching it series 4, fell in love, bought all the videos, etc. So whilst I've watched random episodes and actually done kind of rewatches, I haven't particularly ever sat down and watched Friends, having done 5 years of television podcasting. So I had all these thoughts, all these analytical thoughts as a result of doing things like this podcast. So I had so many for the pilot. So I just found myself recording my thoughts, like just to camera on my phone, just a 5-minute thing. And then I did it for the next 2 episodes, and I wasn't going to talk about it, but I was tempted to do it for every episode and then just put it up and be like, Chris reviews every episode of season 1 of Friends, you know.
That'd be great.
But so that, you know, that won't come for a while. And it is, I probably, now that I've said it on here, comment below if you'd be interested in checking that out. But the only problem is it got to episode 3 and it was like the more sort of filler episodes of this, I was like, yeah, it's good. It's all right. It's not great. It's fine. Like, so, you know, I think
that's okay too if you just make them a few minutes long when they're like that. I'd be excited to hear your thoughts on that. I nearly did something very similar for Doctor Who, but I found it quite, like, I found it put a weird amount of pressure on me watching the episodes personally.
Yes, which is why I might not do it, because I found myself watching them going, am I still enjoying these?
If I'm forcing myself to be analytical.
Trying to think of points to make.
Yeah.
So I don't know for sure that I'll do it. Comment below. If there's a demand, maybe I'll do it. But anyway,
so
that first episode of Friends is genius. Yeah. And they set up the characters beautifully. I think on reflection, this one does. But I'll put this to you. It's a bit more Mother Nature, and I know the show celebrates Earth in a big bad way, but some of the stuff Belle says and some of the way Garnet's like link all the areas of the universe, I don't think they really keep that thread up.
I don't know. I'm not sure what you mean by that. Like, you mean keep that thread? It's not a thread. It's just sort of an outlook, isn't it?
Yes, but I don't think they... Name me another point in the show I can only think of the mindful stuff, which for me is very different and is about mental health. Name me another point in the show where Garnet's like, close your eyes and listen to the universe, and Pearl's like, oh, the flowers floating down.
Well, Pearl's like that and talking about balance and being at peace and stuff when she does her sword training with Connie. And Sapphire does that at the wedding.
No, true. Okay.
And that's just the first two examples that come to my head, and I hadn't really...
I think maybe I thought that because I watched those clips and were like, no, it's about gem powers and all of the about Homeworld and diamonds.
It's them just trying to get him in touch with, because you said you actually nail it in the first episode, which is actually amazing because it's just like without even with not even enjoying it. You go, obviously it's when he's at peace. It's when he's like focused and calm and like together and like I was like, yeah, you're right. I couldn't say that, but that's what I'm thinking. Listen, I can hear myself thinking listening to the conversation back. And you definitely you definitely got a sense of what was really going on early on.
But I changed my watching it back. I kind of changed my mind on that. I think it's as much as it's about him being at peace, it's also about him doing it for the crystal gems. Him doing it for his family. And because the second one isn't like, it's when he's like, when they're like, you're a crystal gem too, and it's all very crystal gems, yeah. And so I think there's a certain element of peace, but he's produced his weapons in big, hearty battles. I think you could also view it as a protection thing and a family thing.
Yeah, I would agree. Did you spot the reference to Connie?
I spotted her in the opening, which was almost fascinating, but I don't know if that's just like the versions we're watching.
That opening always had her in it even before she was introduced. That opening was there from day one. No, when he opens the freezer to get the cookie cats out, her glow stick is in there. The one that he was saving to give back to her a year later when she returned.
That's awesome.
Because obviously in Bubble Buddies, like, he sees her on the beach and he tries to return that glow stick to her. It's like a glow stick necklace thing. It's like a round one. And we might watch that one, make that part of our list, because that's a great episode.
Oh, yeah, I'd love to see Connie's intro,
Yeah, it's really cool. It's a good episode. Episode 7. We'll add that one to the list.
I kind of felt Lars was just as defined as oddly just as defined as the gems at this point.
Yeah, agreed. Sadie less so, but Lars for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
What are some of my other quotes that you wanted to get my opinion on?
Oh, yeah, so there's a couple. Another one, because you were talking about how you didn't like that the characters didn't, or nothing had backstory, and that the show wasn't telling you anything. You sort of were like, I can't believe I'm saying this, but it's almost like The Wire where they don't tell you anything. But then you were like, why has the cat got a backstory? The fucking cookies have more of a backstory than the monsters and the gems and the characters. A fictional product in the show has more backstory and characterization than them. Do you still feel that's the case? Do you still feel like we get more backstory to the cookie cats than everyone else?
Well, not now that I've watched it all, but I don't think that's an unreasonable argument for this episode.
No, I don't either. No. That's what I'm saying. I actually think I agree with you on that front in terms of like what they give you. Like what we get from the gems is so thin compared to what we get from Steven.
And actually, we don't. I like that wasn't something they continued doing. Like, it was kind of almost fun because essentially it's almost a little mini song / rap, which is obviously quite cool considering where they go with the music. But we don't know about Dogcopter. We don't know about that island show that Amethyst and Peridot become obsessed with. I like the fact that they didn't do that for all those things. So actually, they kind of only really did it here with the Cookie Cat. So I kind of agree with that. Still, I think that's fair.
But did you notice this time that the lyrics, obviously, of Cookie Cat are a kind of the story of the show? He came to this planet from outer space, a refugee of an interstellar war. But now he's at your local grocery store. And then it goes, Cookie Cat, pet for your tummy. Cookie Cat, super duper yummy. Cookie Cat, and then it left his family behind. Which you could argue is foreshadowing, because if Rose left Homeworld and you're arguing a relationship of any kind between the diamonds, like that's her leaving her family behind by hiding on Earth.
I know it is a family. I don't want to go into that separate debate, but I've seen it in the comments and on the Discord and stuff. I really do feel it is a sisterly thing between the diamonds and a family unit. The funny diamonds and
it's come up a couple of times in the Discord, but I keep refusing to get involved because I have no horse in that race. My point has always just been that it's currently open to interpretation, which I stand by. That's my current position on it. Is that they have,
absolutely.
You absolutely, there is plenty of evidence to suggest it's a sort of more motherly relationship, but there is also a lot of contextual stuff that I think could make somebody easily feel it was sisterly, and I wouldn't begrudge anybody either opinion at this stage. I don't think there's...
No, I don't at all. No, I don't. But I think if I was going to put my foot in a camp, I think things like White Diamond sending Pink to her room.
Yeah, that doesn't feel like a grandmother thing to do. That feels very much like a mother thing to do, but yeah.
And then in the car journey home going, we'll speak to her first, that feels like a sisterly thing to me.
Okay, yeah, I know, and I don't disagree with you. I think that's again, in the sense of like to me there's plenty of contextual stuff for both. So I think the basic premise is they're related, like and how you want to interpret. If you want to put a human relationship on that, you can, but it's not really the intent anyway. I don't think there is any intent, full stop, to make their relationship completely sync up to a human sort of family dynamic. You just find parallels when it suits, which is kind of what
I don't think they're ever going to say we're sisters, that's our mum. I don't.
No, never. They're never going to say either of those options out loud. It's just going to be what you pick up from context. Agreed.
And by the way, me saying I don't think they're ever going to say that. That's a prediction, Cram. Write it down. that's for you, my friend. Hi, Crab.
Amazing. Right. Okay. Let's go through. So in terms of what were we even talking about? Fuck. We were talking about the backstory. So in terms of the backstory, like
I just want to give a lot of love to Cram. Thank you for all your big comments, buddy. Sorry, I know I'm interrupting, but I feel like I've never got the chance to do that. All your big comments are awesome. Keep doing it. Thank you very much. Sorry that we don't respond to every element, but yeah.
At the moment, we're not responding to much at all because I've had a ridiculous couple of weeks at work.
Yeah, so, same. Sorry to anyone. Yeah,
we are reading them. We're just not getting a chance to reply, which is a real shame.
Yeah. And we love it when you talk to each other. So please keep commenting.
Mm-hmm. Keep using the Discord.
Yeah, man.
So in terms of the backstory, like you were obviously in a position of just wanting to know what the fuck's going on. You just wanted context for the situation. Having seen the show and coming back towards the first one, do you still feel like the first episode could, if you could include a little bit more context into that first episode to help ease a new viewer in slightly more, just a little bit more information so that they understand the basic idea is that the crystal gems are protecting the world from monsters, or like just something to give it just a little bit solidify it more, would you, or do you think it's fine as it is?
I think I would do something to, like, the notion, correct me if I'm wrong, but they weren't even at the beginning fighting corrupted gems.
Correct.
They were fighting the offspring of corrupted gems, which I don't remember happening again.
That's one of those weird, like, you get this sometimes in Harry Potter where it's like there are certain details that get fleshed out a little bit later, and when you go back to the earlier things, it's not a plot hole as such, more like a plot, like a plot sort of speed bump. Like it's like it doesn't quite fit, but you could sort of explain it away if you wanted, but you'd have to do a bit of fansplaining. Like
but no, I think it fits. It's just not an avenue they explored further.
It fits well enough. Yeah.
If I could do anything, I would make Centipedal more gemmy. I don't know if I would make a gem more obvious. I don't know if I would have something in the dialogue, but I think if I could add anything, but it still wouldn't make it clearer. But I think it would make it clear that there was something there.
So you're saying, this actually goes back to another quote of yours. So this is actually a perfect time for me to read this one. what am I meant to care about at the moment? Am I meant to care if the ice cream manufacturers produce more? Am I meant to care about the bugs and the monsters and whether they protect the universe? What am I supposed to care about? I think that's a fair point, because what you're essentially saying there, and correct me if I'm wrong, because again, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you're essentially saying a hint that there's a wider world, not what is the wider world, but just some sort of clue that there's more to what you're seeing than the surface level people fighting monsters. That would have been better for you. Is that a fair interpretation?
I think so, and again, that comes back to my surprise rewatching it, that they spent so much time on the Cookie Cats. And I think just a bit more time on the world building and a bit less time on the Cookie Cats. But, it came as a pair with laser light cannon, and it they certainly set Steven up very well with that Cookie Cat stuff. So I can see why they made the decisions they made.
Were you surprised to see so much of the stuff that becomes relevant later is there, but no one hangs a hat on it? Because essentially what you're saying is, wouldn't it be nice if they'd hung a hat on the fact that these things they're fighting are also gems? Of course, that doesn't actually end up coming up until like episode 26, 25, around Mirror Gem, Ocean Gem. But were you surprised, as I was when I rewatched this a year ago with you, at how much of the lore of the show has clearly already been figured out? You very clearly see that they notice that the centipedals they're beating on don't produce a gem when they're destroyed. They're not offspring as such. They're just sort of like they've grown from the original gem, because it's corrupted. Bits of it are sort of coming off and being little monsters as well. And then when they fight the actual main centipedal, they poof it and it's got a gem, and you see Garnet bubble it and send it away. And it's like the consistency of the world they've created is clearly already in place. The rules are already there. Do you know what I mean? You're right, they don't explore that idea of a gem monster being able to sort of create other beings as such, again, that I can recall. But the notion of what's going on is clearly already very much known to everyone in the behind the scenes. And I was really impressed with how much of the sort of rules and the gem characteristics were already... The logic of the world is basically there very, very early.
I tell you one element of that, though, that I was like, ooh, does that idea sort of for good reason gets dropped? The notion, there's a line of dialogue along the lines of, we think they're going for the temple, which is way more proactive and a plan than any of the corrupted gems seem to have going forward. Correct me if I'm wrong. Whenever they come across plans and stuff, it's from gems from Homeworld that aren't corrupted. I can't remember. Most of the time, aren't the corrupted gems used as monsters? Whereas the sort of implication there was they were aiming for something specifically.
I have the line in front of me. If you want me to repeat it, if that would help your argument.
I'd love you to.
So Pearl lifts up a centipedal and groans, "Ugh, sorry, Stephen. We'll get these out of your room. We think they were trying to get into the temple." And Steven's like, "Oh, you don't have to get rid of them. They're really cool." Which I love, by the way, because I just love that they've already got him being empathetic. Such good character work. But in terms of that line, I think that's another example of a sort of plot speed bump where it's like, it doesn't. It's clearly something they were thinking about but never really went with, and now it sticks out a bit. Another example I always think of, my key example whenever people talk about that is actually from the first chapter of Harry Potter when Dumbledore doesn't recognize... when McGonagall goes, "How did you recognize me as a cat?" And he's like, "Oh, I can't think of anyone else who would sit that stiff," or whatever. And it's like, well, no, they very clearly set up in later books that the animals people turn into have very specific markings, and if you know someone who's an animagus, you would recognize them immediately. Do you know what I mean? Like, so it's sort of a plot speed bump in that it's not completely nonsensical. It doesn't break the world. You can explain it away, but it also doesn't...
Is there any evidence that he's seen her animagus before?
Yeah, she does it at school for the students every year, so presumably, yeah.
Is Dumbledore chilling at the back of the classroom?
She has to register herself as an animagus, and I'm presuming she does it relatively frequently.
Is Dumbledore taking that register?
But that's what I'm saying though. It's not it seems unlikely he would have known her for as long as he's known her and not seen it. But as I'm saying, that's what I mean when I say plot speed bump. A full plot hole would be.
I think you're shitting on JK's planning, and I'm having none of it.
Well, let's go back to Steven Universe then before that becomes a conversation. But I think my point stands though with like this. I think you're right. I think you've hit the nail on the head, which is like, yeah, you can explain it. You can, because there have been instances in the past where they've been drawn to things. I think in this first block of like 20 episodes when there's different monsters, they try to vary it up more. In later episodes, because there's always something else going on, the monsters don't need to be anything more than monsters. But in these earlier episodes, when the monsters were the focus, they tried to give them more interesting things to be doing. So, for example, I'm pretty sure that the monster in the Connie episode, Bubble Buddies, that's chasing them, is actually after her glow stick.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So they do, in these earlier episodes, give them characteristics, and they phase it out because at a certain point you don't need to make the monsters' intentions interesting, because at a certain point I don't
think it's even necessarily that. It makes it way more horrific if they've lost the sense of planning and thinking in that way as well. It makes it all the more terrifying.
That's a really good point.
And makes it more cruel and heartbreaking. And actually, at this stage in the show, it's not. We don't know that people did this to them, or Gems did this to them rather. So that's feels less relevant or something.
And what's interesting, obviously, is now we know that Centipede is not Centipede but Nephrite. And like we've seen a human version of Nephrite now speaking in English and saying sentences, and you're right. And again, that's another example of the planning of the show. Jesus Christ, Centipede's there from episode 1. Nephrite is there from episode 1.
Yeah. And that at this time of recording, we saw Centipede in the last episode we watched.
Yeah, because the last episode we saw was Legs from Here to Homeworld. For those of you who are listening to this in the far-flung future, when we've hopefully actually had new episodes to review, you lucky bastards.
Happy 2020!
The piece of music that as well, apparently that comes up when Steven pulls his shield out, is the very first piece of music they ever wrote for the show.
No, that's cool.
A bit of Triv. Actually, that's a good point. We didn't do Triv for the early episodes. Should we do Triv?
Let's do Triv.
Oh my god, we get to do Triv, Chris. New Triv, maybe.
And you can read out all the Triv as well, because it doesn't have to just be. There's no need to hide Triv.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, great. So the Crystal Palace that's referred to in the pilot is now obviously been renamed the Crystal Temple in this actual pilot, because obviously remember there was an unaired pilot as well.
Yeah.
And apparently in the storyboards, Pearl has an extra line, but it's removed in this episode for unknown reasons. For some reason they haven't put the line in here though. If they know it, where is it?
Yeah, that's odd.
This episode was available to download on iTunes as a free download before it officially aired on Cartoon Network. So Cartoon Network were fucking this show around through digital releases long before the modern era of them doing that. There you go. Dear Lord. The background music for the Cookie Cat song was composed on a Nintendo Game Boy.
Wow.
That's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
There's a lot of, Anamanaguchi, for example, who are the band who supply the piece of music we use for the Nothing But Static main podcast intro theme. Yeah, they use a Game Boy and an old SNES, I think, to produce some of their music as well. So it's not completely uncommon, but it's still pretty cool. It's really cool to mod an old like console like that and use those as old 16-bit sounds or whatever. Apparently, I'm stuck in here by Lars at the beginning of the episode is a reference to the line, I'm walking here. I really didn't get that, but fine. Let's have a look. Oh yeah, the sequence in which Steven's gem glows and he summons a shield for the first time is similar to the transformation you often see in the magical girl genre, often seen in anime and manga. That's true. Nephrite's gem resembles a Pokeball. Whether that's intentional or not, I don't know, but that is true. Obviously,
I thought that design looked familiar.
Yeah. Nephrite returns in Monster Buddies, obviously, and then a few other episodes after that. Stephen and the Stevens, multiple Stevens travel back in time to the ending of an episode where Stephen throws up Judy. So in Stephen and the Stevens, he ends up going back in time to this episode, which is pretty funny. I don't know if there's a reference to that here or not, if they've set it in place or early or not. I don't think they do. Obviously, Connie's bracelet is in the freezer, the glow bracelet, which gets returned to her in Bubble Buddies. Let's have a look. Apparently, there's a sticker from Crime Breakfast Friends in the background. Am I reading that right? This is a long one.
Oh, okay.
Crime Breakfast Friends was airing on Stevens Television. The show would later appear in Space Race. Oh, okay, so you can see the Crime Breakfast Friends on in the background. Wow, Crime Breakfast Friends was set up really early then. Dear Lord.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That is nuts. Yeah. Well, there you go. So that's the last one, other than, that this episode, shot from this episode is reused in a later episode that you're very fond of, Chris.
What, the one we don't name?
No, the other one we don't know. There are two ones we don't name.
Are there?
Yeah, there's Say Uncle.
Oh, fuck, I don't even count that as an episode.
It does have that amazing joke, though, where he's like, I don't know who you are to Uncle Grandpa. And Uncle Grandpa's like, I've been here since the beginning. And it cuts back to the scene where he's singing the Cookie Cat song. And like a banner ad pops up at the bottom, Uncle Grandpa up next. And it's Uncle Grandpa's head, like, in the banner ad. And he's going, hey, kid, stop singing, or something like that. Like, he's talking, like, he's like, see, I was there from the beginning. So I thought that's a funny guy.
I don't even count that as an episode. Oh, we're gonna have to rewatch that.
Well, what I was gonna say is, I mean, unless have you got anything to add about Gem Glow?
No. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
I enjoyed it way more than the first time.
Mm-hmm.
I think some of my criticisms were a bit harsh out of potential bereavement, potential frustrations that I was being forced to watch another show.
Yeah, you were mad about that. You were bitter.
But I think it represents the show. It becomes beautifully in some areas and not overly in others. So yeah, but it was definitely more enjoyable.
You know what? I think you've just hit the nail on the head. I think you've just melted my brain a little bit. That's the issue, isn't it? So it's that it represents some elements of the show really well, but then those aren't necessarily the elements that are the strongest things about the show. The things I most associate with the show, the things I love most about it, are only thinly here in this episode and become prominent later on.
Yeah, I think that's... I mean, even the love message isn't overly pushed here, There's a slight message of family. Family, to quote Fast and Furious. But yeah, there's no...
La Familia.
Yeah, but... yeah. But I definitely enjoyed it more than the first time.
There you go.
You know what? I don't know if you were about to say suggest episodes for us in the comments.
I was.
But I honestly think I resent, because I understand at least why, because it's become such a big deal and such an in-joke and such a part of this podcast. And because I legitimately think I will still be disgusted by it, and we'll get a bit of old Chris anger back. I completely see why we have to rewatch CF, but Say Uncle, in my opinion, isn't even a friggin' episode. That I genuinely resent having to potentially rewatch, because you know what, we shouldn't have had to have watched it in the first place.
Do you think though that your opinion might potentially change on that?
On Say Uncle? No.
No. Do you think because do you not remember that? The reason I think it might be worth retouching as a subject, and you might disagree with me on this, but I think a lot of your criticism at the time, you were like, I want an episode of Steven Universe. Like, I was a bit blindsided by this bullshit of, this non-canon bullshit. Like, why? Like, if I'd have been warned, like, there was almost an element of like, if you'd known what you were getting into, you might have been more amenable to it. That was the sort of the vibe I was getting from the conversation. But because I had not told you about it, I had mentioned it in a really early episode and then not told you it was coming up. So there's that whole moment you talk about where you say, I shushed the woman I love because I thought Rose was back, and it turned out to be fucking Uncle Grandpa. So like you obviously went into it expecting another episode of Steven Universe with consequences and all that stuff, and weren't really, do you not think on a rewatch going into it knowing that it's a non-canon, silly, rompy thing that you might be more open to just having a laugh? And like then forgetting about it, like which is what I do. Which is, it exists and it makes me chuckle, and then it goes away.
If you went to a restaurant, Dan, and the food gave you the shits,
yeah,
and then I said to you, "Let's go to that restaurant again," and you said, "Nah, it gave me the shits," and I said, "Yeah, but Dan, don't you think part of the problem there was that you were surprised by the fact that you ended up getting the shits? Whereas if we go there again, eat the food, and you're going to spend your evening on the toilet,
I mean,
surely it's going to be fine."
That analogy does not work at all. I mean,
you would stop wanting to eat with me.
The problem Chris, the issue with getting the shits isn't the surprise, it's actually having the shits. What I'm saying is the being blindsided
the food's just not very good then. Huh? But the problem with this episode is it's inconsequential bollocks, and I didn't find it particularly funny, and all of the rest of it. I can't see how any of those issues are going to change because I know they're coming.
I'm wondering if partly why you didn't find it funny was because you were grumpy about the fact it was a non-canon episode, and going into it with that knowledge ahead of time might make you more amenable to the humour.
I don't think having a load of toilet roll ready will make you any more inclined to go into that restaurant. So,
now we have to find out. So it's got to go on the list. I think I think we've sealed the fate there.
What were you gonna say? Were you gonna put it open to suggestions?
Well, I'm not gonna do a poll and just do whatever is top. But like, I would like to get a gauge of what people think. What people want it. So if you just want to list the names of episodes you're interested in us talking about again, do. But if you've got a specific thing that like as well, see if like I just want to see what I'm trying to gauge what people want from these. Like, do they want us to hit episodes with foreshadowing? Do they want us to hit episodes where you had a very specific opinion and they want to see if that can be challenged now?
That's fair.
I want to see what like people are after from these revisits. So I think. Comment below with the episode you think, any episodes you think we should be rewatching, and potentially, if you can, add a reason why. And I'd be very curious to read through those. Even if I don't reply, I definitely will be reading all those. I read all the comments anyway, but like specifically, I'd be looking out for those and what I would like to do is basically formulate the list based on sort of what my own vibe for stuff I want to hit on again, which is like the Connie the introduction of Connie is a big episode. It'd be really nice to revisit that. So there's a couple I think we should be rewatching already, and I want to see if the listeners line up with mine. I'm not going to just blindly do what we're asked to do, because I think we have to make sure that it's something we're interested in talking about again, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. I think.
But I would love to get the perspective of the listeners and see if it's in line with mine, and if not, then I have to sort of maybe find a middle ground, if that makes sense.
Yeah, reassess or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm very curious to see what people want out of these. These aren't going to be every week, by the way. Like in terms of we're going to be mixing this up. Like it's I will probably do these this week and next week as Gem Glow Laser Light Cannon, but I do not be surprised if the week after is another topic episode. We'll do one or two of these and then go back to doing sort of the hiatus content you've been witnessing elsewhere. So.
Yeah, and again, comment because it can be when there's no news, it can be difficult to think of a topic. So I think also
I think there's
topics you want us to talk about.
I think there's a Lapis episode due based on some of the debates I've seen in our Discord about it's going to be interesting because I don't know if we disagree enough for it to be an interesting 40-minute discussion, but we'll see.
Well, we didn't disagree on the censorship, but we still.
Yeah, you're right. But I just want to make sure I want to make sure if there is a debate that's happening in the fandom that we're representing both sides of it and not just dismissing the other side.
Yeah, that's fair. But yeah, comment below if it's like talk about not ranking the gems, but if there's the LGBT angle or something. Although I want to have a guest on for that. My friend who I referenced on here before, who wrote an essay on that and is up to date with the show. So it was so funny because we met and he was like, "You up to date?" I was like, "Are you up to date?" And he went, "What did he say?" He said something like, "They took a trip."
Yes.
In a body part, and I was like, "Yeah, no, we're both up to date then."
Yeah, I would have just gone with. I would have just gone with "Hello, Star Child."
Yeah. So I want to have him on to discuss that, but please let us know topics because that I think is where I really am keen to make it recaps, news, and topics, and I think we need some help on the topics. I think it's fair to say.
It's got to be a healthy mix of those three things: recaps, topics, and news. I think so. Yeah, we've already done a newsy episode, which is our first one back. We did a topic episode last week. We've done a recap one this week. So you guys have had a nice spread of what these hiatus episodes are going to be going forward until we have new content. And Chris has very brilliantly named. It's really far off happening. But I just want to tell people the name because I love it so much. Chris has already named Over the Garden Wall.
Over the Garden Wall
Go
podcast, yeah. Well, no, it's going. So, like Dan says, it will be. It's one of those really weird things. It's safe to say it's far off because our schedules have been nuts, so we've not been able to record a bunch of them. If the schedules align and we get them recorded, it might be sooner, but it might be a fair bit off. But we were struggling to come up with a name until over-analysing the garden wall.
Yeah, Chris
I was really pleased with that.
Chris just texted me that one night, and I think I must have gone to bed early, and I woke up to the text that just said over-analysing the garden wall, and I just sent it back, a message back that was just like, nailed it, or something like that. Like, it was, it was just like, you've done it, like, well done, like, that's it, over-analysing the garden wall.
Really
so at some point,
we
do have Honey, I Shrunk the Steven University and over-analysing the garden wall, but those are a bit further in the future because our schedules are a bit nuts right now, that's for sure. So, but in the meantime,
I think it was your mate, wasn't it, that named Steven University?
Steven University did, yeah. It was my friend Scott, who I went to college with. I went back like over Christmas last year. Oh no, it was in March last year. We'd already recorded about 9 or 10 of these, and I took a week trip home last year, just to see family and friends and stuff. And I hung out with Scott one day, and I said, "Oh, we've been recording this podcast, and it's become a running joke that we don't have a name for it." And he was like, "What's it about?" It's Steven University, Steven Universe, and like literally, I think it was like he had like a minute of like thinking. Like, where I could tell he wasn't really paying attention to what I was saying anymore because he'd gone into, I bet I can figure this out. I bet I can come up with a name. And then he just literally, like, in one go. Like, he didn't do the external thinking where he said, like, 8, 9 names that I was like, nah. And then he nailed it. He literally just thought about it until he figured it out. And then he went, Steven University. And I was like, that's it. Game over. Well done. So, yeah. I'm glad.
March last year. Oh no, it was March last year. Yeah, sorry, I was getting my ears mixed up. That would make sense.
We started recording them in late January.
It was a bereavement then because my nan died on the 20th of January. What a morbid fact to end this podcast with.
Yeah, we started recording in late January. It was a bereavement. We'd done about 9 or 10, maybe even 11 by March, and then we started releasing them. I think at the end of March or April. But by then we
gone
were
home in that March time, and Scott had named it, yeah.
And then I came back, and we started releasing them once I had a name, yeah. So there you go.
And then we bumped it up, to 2 a week, and our lives got crazy.
Oh man, yeah, you people and your 2 a week. 1 a week's not
The period when we were doing Fringe Observers, 2 SUs a week, and NVS was madness.
That was 3 podcasts a week. On the average week with 4 every other week. That was too much.
And it would have been fine. We had a whole system where we were like 7 ahead and we worked 7 weeks ahead on SU and we worked out if we at least managed to record 2 a week, which even that alone sounds mad now looking back. But if we managed to record 2 a week, we should stay 7 ahead and it'll be fine. And then your laptop broke and it was like, oh.
Yeah, and there was a point when we were 14 or 15 ahead. There was definitely a point where we were that far ahead.
Yeah. We released. I know because I remember doing the maths. Because I remember being really like, oh, should we do this? And then looking at it and going, well, we're 7 weeks ahead if we stay 7 weeks ahead. But then life gets in the way. But yeah,
cool. So thanks very much for listening, everyone. We'll get out your hair now. We're just rambling at this point, so we'll move on. But comments below about future topics or recap
episodes.
suggestions, and I'll take it all on board and figure out what the best thing to do for everyone is. But that is everything for this week. So thanks again for everyone for listening. I've been glad to see the numbers on these haven't been drastically lower than the numbers of our episode discussions. Although I do think when a new episode airs, our first one back is going to be is going to take a bump. I think we're going to see some traffic, so I'm pretty excited about that. Because it'll be the first time we'll be talking about an episode like really as it airs.
Yeah.
In the wave that follows it, so that's gonna be exciting. But anyway, thanks for listening, everyone. I've been Dan Doolan.
I've been Chris Billingham.
Are you bringing back the awkward endings?
Just a nod to the origins of this podcast.
Gotcha. Me stopping the intro to ask that question made it awkward, didn't it?
Yep.
Cool. That's everything for this week. Thanks very much for your time. We'll speak to you next week when we recap or revisit Laser Light Cannon.
See ya.
Yep. Way to derail your own outro, Dan. Questioning the gag.
I think what's upsetting is that, like, this is more awkward than bringing up my nan's death.
How is that possible?